Alrighty, I know that most of America today, especially because there's not a lot of news going on, is talking about Damar Hamlin and the jabs and whatever else. And I just wanted to get that out there because I don't want people to think that I'm avoiding the topic because I'm afraid of talking about the jabs on YouTube. I think I'm good enough at euphemisms, and I hardly ever get flagged anyway. I get no views, so you don't have people coming in here and mass flagging me. I just don't want to talk about it because there's plenty of other people that have already said it. So what I'll say is, if you're interested in Damar Hamlin, go watch Peak Prosperity. He has had the best, I think, analysis of this situation. If you want something that's actually kind of fair and balanced. And I mean that. I don't mean that like the cringy, old-timey Fox News fair and balanced. I mean, he's actually looking at what the possibilities could be. And yes, one of those possibilities is that it is related to Lord Jabu Jabu, our Lord and Savior. But anyway, with that out of the way, with that disclaimer out of the way, I want to talk about how Kevin McCarthy is not the Speaker of the House. In fact, nobody's the Speaker of the House right now. We don't have a Speaker of the House. And I feel fine. In fact, I would prefer it stay this way, to be honest. I would rather that the House adjourns and never comes back in session. Our country would be much better off if the House of Representatives was just dissolved completely. And I'm not calling for the United States to be reorganized into the first American empire, because that's already what we are. If the House was dissolved once and for all, not only could the House stop doing bad things to us, and all the bad things would be done to us by the president, people would be less susceptible to believing this lie of democracy. Because I have to tell you, if we lived in a democracy, Kevin McCarthy wouldn't be anywhere near the levers of power. He has approximately a 0.00000% approval rating. Yes, I didn't even add a 1 there at the end. That's how low Kevin McCarthy's approval rating is. Now, there's a margin of error in all polls, so maybe, you see, he might have a 5% approval rating if you look at specific polls. But if you actually talked to real Americans, approximately 0% of them like Kevin McCarthy. And in fact, 99% of them have never even heard of Kevin McCarthy. Yet, he defiantly clings onto this idea that he's going to be the Speaker of the House. And a majority of the Republican congressional delegation, they are egging him on and feeding into this fiction. The truth is, Kevin McCarthy wanted to be Speaker about 10 years ago when John Boehner was ousted by, the Tea Partiers. Because John Boehner, he didn't get along well with the Tea Partiers. The Tea Partiers didn't get along with him, so they held essentially what outside of the United States is called a vote of no confidence. And John Boehner was going to lose that. And so they had to find a new Speaker. And the next guy in line, so to speak, if you use Washington lingo, the next guy in line would have been Kevin McCarthy, who was at the time, I believe, the House Majority Leader. And to put it mildly, the House Republicans who supported getting rid of John Boehner had no more love for Kevin McCarthy. Going from John Boehner to Kevin McCarthy would have been a lateral move. There's no point in ousting Boehner if you're just going to get McCarthy. So they had to find a compromise candidate. And this is something that not a lot of people, I think, appreciate. If you remember, the Speaker of the House after John Boehner was Paul Ryan, who once upon a time was seen as a somewhat conservative member of Congress, and he had, some respect from both the conservative and just purely corporatist, total sellout wing, the Denny Hasterts of the world. And yes, it turns out that Paul Ryan is very much, a corporatist shill and grifter like the rest of them. But back then, he had, he didn't hate conservatives. We'll put it that way. He wasn't openly hostile towards them, and he could work with them. That's why he was chosen as a compromise speaker. And that's, kind of the person that you need in this kind of a situation. You need someone who gets along with at least their own party, because these days you're not going to get along with members outside of your own party, unless, you're a really, really bad guy like Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell has plenty of Democrat friends, but, the Senate is kind of a different beast. In the House, you want a speaker who gets along with 0 Democrats and gets along with all the Republicans. And if you're a Democrat speaker, you want vice versa. You want a Democrat who doesn't get along with any of the Republicans and, generally gets along with members of their own party. Kevin McCarthy, like John Boehner, is not that type of guy. He is someone who alienates a certain contingent of the Republican Party, who is represented in Congress. Now, when it comes to actual voters, again, nobody likes Kevin McCarthy. But as far as people in Congress are concerned, you've got mostly establishment shills. And those people, they get along fine with old Kev. But they have proven today through 3 separate votes. And it's just humiliating what they've done to Kevin McCarthy. You love to see it. He has lost. In fact, he has less votes to be Speaker than the Democrat candidate, Hakeem Jeffries. And that is because all the Democrats support Jeffries, but not all Republicans support McCarthy. So if they want to have a speaker for the remainder of the 118th Congress, they're going to need to find someone other than Kevin McCarthy who can actually get the votes of almost every Republican in Congress. They have a 5-seat majority, I believe, which means that they can lose 4. So you could lose Matt Gaetz, you could lose what's her name, Lauren Boebert. Who could they lose? Andy Biggs, maybe, because he's running, himself. Whatever. Chip Roy. There's 4. You could lose those 4 members of Congress, those 4 Republicans, as long as you make everyone else happy. But I believe Kevin McCarthy is like 19 votes shy. And so that's way too big of a deficit. Unless people just suddenly change their mind, unless he buys them off like he did Marjorie Taylor Greene, or at least I would assume. I don't know. I would hope Marjorie Taylor Greene, sold out for a decent price, because she clearly has. She made that clear. She's been shilling for old Kev for a number of weeks now, since, of course, after the election. She wasn't shilling for Kevin McCarthy before the election because she understands that he's toxic and that nobody likes him. So anyway, they need somebody else, and the only name that I've seen going around that makes much sense, that I think would be reasonable, would be former Congressman Lee Zeldin, who people were floating as a potential RNC chair. He didn't end up running for that. I think that Lee Zeldin is, he's not a perfect guy. He's not like a bomb thrower of the type that I would, be in favor of. But like when he was running for governor of New York, I said, hey, by New York standards, this guy's a superstar. And honestly, he'd be pretty darn great, I think, by House Republican standards, if he were the Speaker. That'd certainly be a lot better than, another McCarthy, a Boehner, or a Hastert, or a Ryan. With the potential exception of Paul Ryan, because I don't know of any weird scandals that he was involved in, the Republicans in the 21st century have a tendency to elect speakers of the House who are just total deviants. Now, maybe we shouldn't even count Paul Ryan, because Paul Ryan was kind of forced onto the Republican establishment. They didn't want him. They wanted McCarthy at the time. And they settled for Ryan, and so did the Conservatives. The Conservatives also settled for Ryan. But if you look at the Republican establishment, who have they put into the Speaker's chair? 1, Denny Hastert, who was a pedophile. 2, or at least, maybe, I don't know how old the boys were, but he was let's just say he was a wrestling coach, and he was touching the boys. So I don't know exactly how old they are. I don't know if they were, like 17 or something, oh, you could say, oh, he's just a pederast. But, at the end of the day, you're a teacher touching your students. It's close enough to pedo territory. Let's put it that way. Then you had John Boehner, who was just an unabashed drunk. He was just drunk every day. Every time he's on TV, he's wasted. He's red in the face like a lobster, and he just didn't care. He's like, and Nancy Pelosi. People argue, oh, she's drunk too. She's not drunk all the time on TV. I think Nancy Pelosi holds it together better than John Boehner did. John Boehner didn't make much of an attempt to hold himself together, to hold his liquor. He would just drink himself into a stupor, and that's how he carried out his duties. And then now they're trying to force Kevin McCarthy on us, who is an out-and-out philanderer, was having an open affair with another Republican member of Congress who, like him, was married, and he just didn't even care to hide it. And to me, that makes him, on a personal level, pretty darn irredeemable. I mean, I shouldn't say that. He's not irredeemable, but he's not apologized or anything. He's not tried to make amends. There was another guy, the former governor of South Carolina, who his career was destroyed over cheating on his wife. Feels like a long time ago. What was his name? Mark. Can't even remember his name now. He had sort of a political rebirth. He was elected to Congress. Of course, he was defeated for being insufficiently pro-Trump, because I think he was too anti-war or something, and Trump was, supporting the war in Yemen or one of these other conflicts, and so the the military-industrial complex ran I believe a military contractor against him. The details are a little vague to me now. It's been a while. But anyway, that was a guy who had cheated on his wife. He had fallen from grace. He apologized. He had to he had to start up from the bottom. I think he earned some forgiveness. And I'm not saying his wife should forgive him, his ex-wife. But I'm saying, to me, he tried to make some amends with his life as a person and straighten up and be a better person. Kevin McCarthy's never done any of that. Kevin McCarthy just doubles down. That is the pattern of behavior in Kevin McCarthy's life. He doubles down on all the worst things. He doesn't double down on, actually trying to fight for the interests of his voters. He doubles down on personal grudges. So I hope he continues to lose, and it just shows how incapable he is of being a leader. The fact that he won't step down despite the fact that he knows he doesn't have the support to become the speaker. He just keeps threatening and throwing out this ridiculous statement of, oh, they just want the Democrat to be speaker. That's why they're not voting for me. It's like, no, jackass. They want a different Republican, someone who's not you. And if he were a real leader, he would recognize his own unpopularity amongst his colleagues, and he would try and find a compromise candidate that everyone could agree on. But he's not a leader. In fact, according to the leaks I've heard today, he just flat out said, I've earned this. This is mine. You will bow down to me, because I've worked hard to get where I am, and so I demand you make me the Speaker of the House. What a pathetic little man. Anyway, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.